Thanks very much. We'll go to questions, starting with Bloomberg in the middle here in the front, please.
Natalia Drostiak from Bloomberg. Thank you so much for this question. Mr. Sullivan, what's the plan B for Washington's support for Ukraine? We've heard repeatedly in the last few weeks and months that from the White House that this package would eventually get through Congress, but it keeps failing. I mean, at what point do you start looking at alternatives? And Mr. Secretary General, I mean, what can NATO do if the U.S. can't get this aid passed for Ukraine? Thank you.
So first, we're not focused on Plan B, we're focused on Plan A. We're focused on passing a bipartisan support package for Ukraine that will provide it with the tools and capabilities it needs to continue to defend effectively and to take back territory that Russia currently occupies. You've seen a lot of toing and froing in the Congress, and I'm not going to get into the details of that, particularly standing here in Brussels. But what I will say is this. Even in the last 24 hours, you've seen a significant number of Republicans come out and say that no matter what else happens, we need to move forward a package of support for Ukraine. As President Biden said yesterday, history will record any failure to deliver the type of assistance that's contained in the package that was put forward this week. And we fully intend to drive to the point where that package passes both the Senate and the House and lands on the President's desk for signature. At the end of the day, there is no alternative to the United States stepping up to the plate and providing a level of resources that allow Ukraine to have the artillery, the air defense systems, and the other capabilities they need. And time is of the essence in this regard. So we are going to stay focused on that, and we believe that we still can and will deliver it.
First of all, I think we need to recognize how important our support has been since the full-fledged invasion happened or took place in 2022. What we have seen is unprecedented support from NATO allies, and our support is making a difference on the battlefield every day. And it's the support from NATO allies that has enabled and made it possible for the Ukrainians to liberate 50% of the territory that the Russian forces occupied in the beginning of the war. It's our support that enabled the Ukrainians to open a corridor in the Black Sea, pushing back the Russian Black Sea fleet, and also enabled the Ukrainians to inflict heavy casualties on the Russian invaders, more than 300,000 casualties. They lost thousands of armored vehicles and hundreds of aircraft. So the first message is that our support makes a difference. It really helps the Ukrainians to demonstrate that this was a big strategic mistake of President Putin to invade Ukraine. He believed that he was able to take control of Ukraine within days. And now the war soon will move into its third year, and the Ukrainians have been able to actually make important gains. That's the reason also why it is important that the support continues. And as National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan just said, we are focusing on Plan A, and that is that all allies continue to support Ukraine. This is truly a joint effort by Europe and North America. We actually see burden sharing within the alliance when it comes to support to Ukraine. And I expect the US to make decisions in the near future to continue to support Ukraine.
Next question is Reuters in the second row, please.
Andrew Gray from Reuters, a question for both of you. How concerned are you by President Zelensky's decision to dismiss General Zaluzhny at this critical time in the war? And what does it say about the state of civil-military relations in Ukraine, given that in most democracies, if a civilian leader had said that he no longer wanted a chief of staff in office, then that person would no longer be in the job?
So I'll leave it to the Ukrainians to speak themselves to the question of the future of any one of their military personnel. That's a sovereign decision for a sovereign country to make, and obviously an elected leader has to make his choices about who occupies the upper rungs of the military leadership. All I can say is that from the United States' perspective, we're going to continue to support both the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian military in their efforts to continue to get the kind of progress that the Secretary of General referenced But we will leave the decisions, the personnel decisions, to the Ukrainians. That's not for us to decide from Washington or from here in Brussels.
Yeah, and I agree. Just to highlight, this is of course a Ukrainian decision. It's not for NATO to have any opinion about that. But I welcome the very clear statement from Foreign Minister Kuleba that any changes will not affect Ukraine's relationship with partners and with NATO. So we will continue to support. That's what matters, and we will continue to do so.
Next question from the Washington Post, please, here.
Thank you. For the National Security Advisor, Hungary promised not to be the last ally to ratify Sweden's entry into NATO, and yet here we are. We still don't have a sense of when or if this will happen. Some US lawmakers have proposed tougher measures, potentially sanctions, changes to visa rules for Hungary. I'm curious what specific measures the administration is considering to close this deal. And for the Secretary General, same question, essentially. Hungary said it wouldn't be the last. It is the last. Can this alliance, and can you still trust Hungary as an ally? Thank you.
So first, in the session today with the National Security Advisors, we heard security advisor after security advisor say that it's past time for Sweden to get in, and to directly address the representative from Hungary to say, indeed, they are the last, and it's a matter of credibility and obligation that they take the necessary steps to complete the parliamentary process so that NATO can, in fact, welcome Sweden as the 32nd member. We see a path forward for that. Of course, we're staying in close consultation with Sweden, who sees a path forward for that. So I'm not going to stand here today and make particular threats or speculations about steps we would take down the road. But of course, our patience on this can't be unlimited either. So we'll continue to watch it carefully, but hope that there is a constructive resolution to this issue in the very near term.
I spoke with Prime Minister Erdogan a few days ago, and he made it very clear that he strongly supports Swedish membership of the alliance. It is also clear that the Hungarian parliament is not in session now, but they will reconvene at the end of February. And the message was that soon after that they will make a decision on ratification of Sweden. So I expect that Sweden will be a full member in the near future. We have to remember that what we have seen since February 2022 is one of the fastest accession processes in NATO's history. Finland and Sweden applied in May 2022. Already in July, they were both invited. Then Finland became a full member in April last year, and I expect then Sweden to be a member very soon. That demonstrates that NATO is not only getting stronger, but NATO is also getting bigger. Finland already a member, and Sweden very soon.
Time for just one or two more. We'll go to the Telegraph, please, here in the second row.
Thank you. Joe Barnes from the Daily Telegraph. To National Security Advisor, Tucker Carlson is about to broadcast an interview with Vladimir Putin. We know Tucker Carlson is highly critical of US Western support for Ukraine. What are you going to do to be countering the message that he puts out at a time when you have your own struggles with Congress and there's lots of sort of doubt amongst Western political bodies, parliaments, over whether we should carry on supporting Ukraine in the long term? And then I guess one for both of you. Ukraine this week's announced a standalone drone force, which puts an emphasis on unmanned and unconventional capabilities. NATO and its allies have been focused on ramping up production for conventional warfare, so artillery shells and air interceptors, etc. Are we capable of now moving that to support Ukraine's wishes to create a sort of a drone-led army? Thank you.
Just to your second question, and very interested to hear what the Secretary General has to say as well, but I mentioned in my opening comments that moving our defense industrial base forward has to be about just traditional production of the basics like 155 artillery shells, but it also has to be about the modern technologies that we are seeing adapt and evolve on the battlefield in real time in this war. A few weeks ago, I hosted at the White House a series of technology companies in the United States who are working on unmanned aerial systems, counter UAS systems, and other advanced technologies and technological capabilities that could be relevant to the future of warfare and that have to be part of the planning and the posture of the United States and of the NATO alliance. We have confidence that we have all the tools necessary to do this. We are on the technological cutting edge. We have the best companies in the world, and we have public-private partnerships that can do this work. Now it's a matter of getting all of that integrated and moving it forward. But I believe that that can be done and should be a central priority, as I noted in my opening remarks. With respect to this interview, we've heard voices in the United States, in Europe, elsewhere around the world, casting doubt or casting aspersions on our collective support for Ukraine from the day this war started, in fact, even before this war started. And we have consistently made the case about why standing up and supporting Ukraine is in the fundamental national security interest of the United States and of the transatlantic alliance. And I believe that we have continued to prevail in that argument, that the vast majority of the American people see the merit in that, and a strong bipartisan group of senators and representatives have continued to support Ukraine and continue to believe in that. So we're going to stay the course, and we're going to continue to point out that walking away from Ukraine at this moment, at this time, would be fundamentally wrong from the point of view of our basic national security in the United States and for our NATO allies as well. And we think we will continue to win that argument because we have the truth on our side.
I welcome the efforts to modernize the Ukrainian armed forces in the midst of a war aggression by Russia against Ukraine. And that includes, of course, everything they do to invest more and to produce more drones. These efforts are conducted with the support of NATO and NATO allies. I think it also demonstrates the importance of working with Ukraine to ramp up also their industrial base, because this is now a war of attrition, and a war of attrition becomes a war of logistics, and then it depends very much on the production capacity, also when it comes to modern systems, like, for instance, drones. Then I think we need to remember that drones have played an important role throughout this war. And the NATO allies have also provided support throughout the war. For instance, Turkey has provided the Bayraktar drones since actually before the full-scale invasion, and now they are now establishing a new factory to produce drones, which is then a Turkish drone factory in Ukraine. And that's one example of many how NATO allies are supporting Ukraine with direct deliveries of weapons and ammunition, but also by investing in and ramping up their capacity to produce their own weapons. Lastly, I think that we need to recognize that the war in Ukraine is a challenge because it is a combination of kind of First World War trench warfare combined with modern technology from the 21st century, including drones. And that's exactly the challenge that we are then addressing together with Ukraine by providing support to them.
Time for one final question. We'll go to Fatz in row 4, please.
Thanks a lot for this. Thomas Kutschka with Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. I have a question to both of you. There's an ongoing debate here in Europe whether European nations are doing enough in terms of military support for Ukraine. Clearly, those at the eastern flank are spending much more, both in absolute numbers and also in share of their GDP than nations in the south. So many people in this city point to, for instance, as France, Spain, and Italy as not spending enough. How do you view this? And would you be in favor of setting a percentage of GDP for military support in favor of Ukraine? Thank you.
From our perspective, the overall picture of Allied burden sharing and Allied contributions to Ukraine looks quite healthy. The United States has come in with a huge contribution over the past 2 years, but so have a lot of European partners, and the total European support, including on the defense side, has been robust and far beyond what I think anybody would have expected when this began. Now, obviously, there are differences among different countries. I'm not going to stand here and speak about any one country. But I think that the formula that we have right now, led by Secretary Austin through the Ramstein process, the UDCG, is generating the kinds of contributions that we would like to see. And some of the major limitations are not actually about people stepping up with resources. It is about these defense industrial base issues that we were just talking about. So I'll leave it to others to have the debate about whether any given country should be doing more. And I don't know that we need a mechanical formula as long as we're getting the overall kinds of resources that are necessary. Of course, we always want to see more. And we're going to countries and saying, hey, there's a particular capability and we need to fill this hole and you've got it, please give it. So don't misunderstand me. We're constantly egging countries on and encouraging them to do more and challenging ourselves to do the same. But I do want to reinforce that the coalition of countries that has come together to support Ukraine has moved fast and has moved big. And we just need to keep that up. And where there's specific gaps, we need to fill them.
Yeah, and again, I agree. I think that what we have seen is actually really burden sharing in practice, demonstrated by European allies and North America together. And especially if on top of the military support, where the US have played a leading role, also add the economic and financial support, where European allies and Canada have played the most important role. If you take all that together, it's really burden sharing across the alliance. Of course, we address what each and every ally can do, both within NATO, but also within the Ramstein format, where the US-led contact group for Ukraine is actually going through different lists of specific requirements. We are asking then allies to do more. So we always would like allies to do more and not least sustain what they're already committed to do. And that's the main message today, is that we must sustain our support, and that's a responsibility for all allies.
That concludes this press point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.